This video is how to simplify radical expressions, and we are going to learn in this video how to add, subtract, and multiply radical expressions. Okay, this first example we're going to do is square root 10 times negative 4 times the square root of 8. And so when you multiply radical expressions, what you're going to do is look at your coefficients. The radicals kind of like variables, not exactly, but they kind of act like that. And we're going to do 1 times negative 4, and then you can say the two radicals go together, so then you're going to say 10 times 8 inside your radical. So you can multiply those two together and get 80. And you can also go ahead and just break things down because you're going to have to simplify your radical anyway. Sometimes it's easier if you're going to do 80 if you know what that is, and it happens to be 16 times 5. Now if you don't know that, of course you can break 10 down to 2 times 5 and 8 down to 2 times 2 times 2 and then take out pairs and simplify your radical that way. But if you know this, then you can say negative 4 from there, and then the square root of 16 is 4, and then the 5 is going to stay under your radical, and so that's going to give you negative 16 times the square root of 5. The next example is 3 square root 5 times the square root 2. So again, if you look at it as our coefficients, we're going to have 3 times 1, you're going to multiply those together, and then the square root of 5 times the square root of 2, that's just equal to the square root of 5 times 2, and so this is 3 times the square root of 10. Square root 15 times square root 3, square root, now 15 times 3, that's 45, and I can write that, but I'm also going to be breaking that down, so it's going to be 9 times 5. Now why do I choose that and not 3 times 15? Because I know that 9 is a perfect square, and so that the square root of 9 is 3, and then square root of 5 is what's left, and there's my answer. Okay, the next one, negative 3, square root 6 times 2 is 12, and I know that 12 is 4 times 3, and the reason I'm choosing that, again, is because 4 is a perfect square. So negative 3 times the square root of 4 is 2 times the square root of 3, that's going to be negative 6 times the square root of 3. Okay, the next one, negative 5 times negative 4, that's 20. The square root of 5 times 10 is 50. And so the way I'm going to choose to break that down is that's the square root of 25 times 2. And so 20 times the square root of 5 is 5 times the square root of 2. So I have 100 times the square root of 2. So multiplying radicals is not really that hard if you just remember how to simplify your radicals altogether. And so that's how you multiply. Dividing has other issues, and we'll talk about that at other times, but not here. The next thing we're going to do is adding and subtracting. And when you're adding or subtracting radicals, the radicals really do act like variables a lot, and kind of in the idea of like terms and that kind of thing. So if you have an expression like this, 5 square roots of 10 plus 2 square roots of 10, if you think about it, like if you have 5x plus 2x, you have 7x. So in the same way, if you have 5 square root 10 plus 2 square root 10, you have 7 square root 10. The only thing you would have to do then is just see if your radical could be simplified. In this case it cannot, so you're done. But that would be the only thing left that you would have to do. Okay, the next example, we've got 2 square root 3 plus 5 square root 75. So just like when you have radicals, we don't have like terms there, so we cannot combine them. You cannot say, 2 plus 5 is 7 and 3 plus 5 is 75 is 78. You can't do that with adding. So we have to look at it maybe another way. So one thing I notice I can do is I can simplify this radical. And so this 5 square root 75, that's 5 square root 25 times 3. And 25, the square root of that is 5, so I'm going to have 5 times 5 times the square root of 3. And you might see where I'm going with this. We're going to have 25 times the square root of 3. Well, now that is the same This is called a radicand, by the way. That's the same radicand, and so I can add them now. So I'm going to have 2 square root 3 plus 25 square root 3, and so that's going to be 27 square root 3. And that's how you're going to do that. So when you're adding, you have to have the same radicand if you're going to be able to add them, and then you would add the coefficients together. But if you don't have the same radicand, you either have to simplify it so that you do, or just know that you're done. Okay, the next one is similar to that. I notice that these are not the same radicand, 2 and 8, not the same. But I do know that I can simplify this right here. So 3 square root 8, that's 3 square root 4 times 2. Square root 4 is 2. So I'm going to have 6 square root 2. So 3 square root 2 minus 6 square root 2 is negative 3 square root 2. Okay, the next one, 128. Got to break that down. Fortunately, I happen to know that that's 2 times 64. So 2 times 64 times 2. And I could break that down other ways, but if I can find a perfect square, that just helps me make this a lot faster. So the square root of 64 is 8. And so I've got 16 square root 2. Now on this other radical, I've got square root of 8. Well, that's not simplified anyway, and in the end I would have to simplify it anyway. So I would have to say minus, don't forget that you've got a negative sign there, 4. Square root of 8, that's the square root of 4 times 2, so take the square root of 4, which is 2. And so I'm going to have this. So now the radicands are the same, and I can say 16 square root 2 minus 8 square root 2 is 8 square root 2. Okay, another example. If you want, you can pause this video and see if you can do this on your own. Make sure you understand. I'm going to break down this radicand here. So negative 4, this is 250. I'm just going to be looking for a perfect square, so I know it's 25 times 10. Square root of 25 is 5. And then that's going to give me negative 20 square root 10. And then plus 5 square root 10. So negative 20 and positive 5 is negative 15 square root 10. And I'm done. Okay, last example. Just kidding, that was the last example. Okay, now you need to complete your guided practice and practice. And if you have any questions, ask your teacher.